This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. Okay, so I took delivery of this PRS DGT yesterday and did that kind of first impressions thing on it. And I was sort of reading the comments and interacting with a couple of you chaps in the comments. And one of the things that people were saying was about sort of the lack of locking tuners, which was a thing that obviously I noticed. And aesthetically, what I really liked about the PRS DGT core model, you had those kind of ivory tuning head things. And the other thing that I saw some people talking about that I hadn't really even sort of thought about until I'd read this as a comment was about the carve of the body. Now, PRS specifically do talk about this in their Maryland video. So there are, I think, at least 3 or 4 body carves.
The CNC operations for S2, CE, and Core are all very, very similar, except for the programs. We use a beveled carve for our S2 bodies, we use a shallow violin carve for our CE bolt-ons, and we use a contoured carve for the Silver Sky. Obviously, we use our traditional violin carve for our Core guitars. The second CNC machine does all of our top cuts. It's going to take care of our violin carve, our neck pocket, pickup holes, tremolo through holes, the divots for the controls, or the wells for a stop tail guitar. That's all done on this second machine.
The question for me was, if you're going to build this type of guitar, you know, like it's not cheap for an Indonesian guitar, and it's also based on, you know, a core model which is well loved. I'd say it's probably got more than a cult following. Like in terms of PRS models that I see most people talk about, the DGT seems to be a little bit of the I don't know, sort of a jewel in the crown of some of PRS's stuff. I don't know if I'm totally right about that, could be wrong. I noticed that this has, you know, quite a shallow bevel if you compare it to the core model. And I thought, is that just PRS kind of cutting unnecessary corners? Because I thought, well, I assumed that, for instance, the birds would be quite a labour-intensive part of the job. and getting that to work. So I looked at that on a video. Actually, the birds are cut by CNC, and so those are relatively not that expensive to put on. And I thought the gold top and this, there's a difference in price of about £100. I think the main differences are the birds and this kind of top. So the birds, I think we could kind of discount, because if you're doing it all CNC based anyway, probably it doesn't make too much difference whether you've got moons in there or birds. Because my initial thought was, well, I'd rather have a proper kind of PRS carve than have the birds. So why didn't they use the proper PRS kind of deep carve on these? The answer is that actually this top is a veneer. And they're very transparent about this in the Indonesian factory tour, actually.
One process we do not do in the USA shop that I find fascinating is the veneering of tops. When we first started using curly maple veneers on the SE guitars, we shot an ad to make clear these SE guitars did not have solid figured maple tops, but had a veneer laminated to a maple cap. As a background in the ad, we used an antique sideboard of mine to show that veneering is a time-honored art form. When the body comes off the CNC machine, it's sanded and glue is applied evenly over the surface. Then a thin, figured veneer is applied to the maple top and the body goes into a press where the veneer is thoroughly bonded to the solid maple cap. When it comes out of the press, a laminate trim bit cuts the veneer to the perimeter shape. This same bit is used to cut any through holes, like pickup or bridge cavities. That process allows for one very figured top, like we would use in Maryland, to be utilized on several PRS SE guitars while still offering a solid maple cap for the guitar.
And you see that the veneer is quite a thin piece of maple. And for that reason, I think if you did the full kind of PRS, a deep kind of violin carve, you'd probably go through the veneer, right? Is it as simple as that? It could be. I think that's the answer to that. So that makes a lot more sense to me now. I thought, well, you know, why are you cutting those specific types of corners? It makes sense now, doesn't it? If you've got a veneer, then you're going to be limited to the amount of a carve that the top can have. It's got a slight carve, and I don't know if does this matter to anyone particularly. I do think that aesthetically the violin carve does look really cool. You don't have the kind of routing for the volume knobs either. Those are the only little sort of question marks that I have around the guitar. So if you're paying sort of £1,000 for a guitar like this, I don't think it would hurt to have locking tuners. Get locking tuners on guitars as cheap as like a Sire Larry Carlton, you know, a £500 guitar. I don't think the locking tuners make a big difference. Ideally, I think people would probably, if they could have something that looks exactly the same as the DGT, they'd probably go for that, wouldn't they? But whether that carve matters to you or not, I'm not totally sure. It was just something I noticed some people talking about. It does, I think, look really classy when you have that. I don't think this looks bad at all by any means, but I hadn't really seen people commenting on that in some of the other side-by-side comparisons. And I think that would make a difference to how it feels under the hand to play, or certainly when you're looking at yourself playing. Whether that matters or not, possibly not. But other than that, a pretty cool guitar, really. People were asking as well whether it has the tall frets. I think so, but again, I can't say for sure because they don't have the specs up on their site for that. What I liked about what Ibanez did with the AZ was that they kept all of what I think are the really key specs that made that guitar unique. So things like the stainless frets, things like the Seymour Duncan pickups, things like the Goto trem. I think they kept most of those key specs the same, and the main cost saving was in that it was built in Indonesia and one was built in Japan. These, it seems like not only are you getting the cost saving because of the labouring, but they're also building them slightly differently. Now, I don't think there's probably going to be much of a difference tone-wise between a full kind of maple cap without a veneer or a maple cap with a veneer. I imagine those kind of things don't really matter hugely, but I think the aesthetics of the thing possibly do matter. Although I think it ends up looking really good anyway. It comes out at a decent weight, plays really well. So in general, I don't have too many concerns about this guitar. Let me know your thoughts if you've got any in the comments. Any thoughts on, you know, should they offer this kind of carve option? Would you pay extra for the proper carve? Does a carve matter? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Cheers for stopping by. I was using the LonestarODS preset on the HX Stomp in that intro. If you wanted to check that out, feel free to do so on Gumroad.